Here.
Pat Kerrigan,
Here.
Tim O'Malley,
Here.
Dave Molitor,
Here.
Cindy Kelly, here. Ronnie Bushnell, Mike Aurelio. 5 here, pledge of allegiance, 7 yeah.
Okay, Reenie's family, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly. We can sing it if you'd like.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for not singing. I need a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Okay, Dave and Al, Cindy? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? 5 to 2. 2 absent, sorry. 2 absent. Recognition of AFT Everyday Hero, Maureen Burka. I always call her Reenie, so when I saw Maureen, I was like,
I always want to say.
Michelle's now going to provide some information about the programs and how Mrs. Burka came to be our everyday hero. So Michelle, would you like to join us and provide some comments?
I don't think I need the microphone. I think, can everyone hear me okay?
I cannot hear you. Oh, no, can you get the microphone, please?
Back in December, I came across a nomination process for the American Federation of Teachers was running a program called Everyday Heroes. And what that is it recognizes people in schools, nurses, paraprofessionals, teachers, all kinds of different categories for the work that they do every day at school, in their communities. And I was reading this website, this email, and I thought, we really have so many everyday heroes in our district. And when I started thinking about it, Reenie came right to mind because of all the things that she does for our students. She works as a special ed paraprofessional. She works with many different students, and they all benefit from working with her. She gives her time so much. I contacted a former parent of hers and said, would you write up something? And the next day she gave me a 2-page letter on everything that Reenie did for her daughter while she was here at Old Quarry. She called her Old Quarry mom. And when she sent her to school, she knew that she was in a safe place and that Reenie was going to take care of her. She also does a lot for our community, and she does many different things she started our 2 on Tuesday program here, where students and teachers are encouraged to bring extra lunches to school, and we give them to one of the food pantries every month, and we've collected well over 1,000 of those in the months that we've been doing that. She does a program at Christmas time where she surprises a family with some of her friends and family also. And they do random acts of kindness in honor of her former sister-in-law who passed away of breast cancer. And so it's just all these things that she does, but one thing that sticks out, this just happened the other day, she didn't even know I probably was going to say this, but on Friday night, Reenie had a house full of people feverishly getting ready for her niece's shower, and she took the time to come back to the dance to make sure that one of her students was okay, because he wasn't so sure he wanted to go to the dance. He doesn't really like loud music or loud noises, and she came back. She left the house and she came here. The shower was the next morning to make sure that he was taken care of, and she stayed here with him and looked out for him. And I think that just sums up what a perfect candidate she was for this Everyday Hero program. I got to travel down to Florida with Reenie when she was getting honored, and she had to speak at the PSRP conference back in April. I might have not told her how many people might actually be at that conference that she was going to have to speak in front of. I might have made it sound like 20. It might have been more like 600. And so she was okay, but she sat up there in front of everyone and she spoke about the programs that she does, and she just was such a great inspiration for our district and many other people. I mean, she had people laughing during that time. She had people crying during that time, just telling her story. So it was my honor to recognize her, and I'm glad she was a finalist. hadn't even told her. I told another teacher here, Laura Rickerson, I said, I might have nominated Rini. I don't know how she's gonna react if I tell her. And Laura's advice to me was, don't tell her until we find out she's a finalist. So then I found out she was gonna be a finalist, and I thought, okay, now how do I tell her? Because I don't know how she's gonna react, but obviously she reacted very well for it, so it was my pleasure to nominate her for that.
We're glad you did.
Thank you.
We have a certificate for you, and then we have a little gift.
I don't like to talk.
Thank you for everything.
I'm really shy.
That's what I've always felt.
Oh, thank you. Do you want me to open it now?
I don't know, should I open it now? Do you want a picture with the board? Well,
Yeah,
or-
sure, yes, take a picture of the board. You can open the gift later.
And Al. You're fine, great. You could come over here too, Mary. Your husband's got it. Thank you.
Sandy, will you take one?
Thank you very much.
Family as well? Sure. That would be wonderful.
Get up there.
Sure. Come on up.
She'll just take the time.
They want a picture with me.
Come on, Mom. Come on, Grandma. Come on, Grandma. Come on, Grammy. She came from somewhere. She's gonna do this somewhere.
She's gonna be the heckler here. She's shrinking. She used to be as tall as
She
you.
learned it from Grandma.
Ready?
Can we have Michelle up here?
Absolutely.
Then you guys can start meeting. Wait, Michelle, you were no kidding.
Yeah, really?
Michelle with the family. She's
Michelle with the family.
Everybody ready? All right.
Moving on to President's report. Today Pam and I got to meet with a Life Scout from Troop 149, 149. And he is going to start working over at Willis Valley on his Eagle project. And we are very excited about it. It's really neat. We would have had him come here tonight to present, but as you can see, we have quite a full agenda. He will be back on June 18th, and he will show us what he's accomplished. He's working on a bench between some trees to protect the trees and keep them from being trampled by the garden. So, very neat. And we also have another Eagle Scout who wants to do something for the garden. Also, we have not met with him yet, but I'll keep you guys up to date as I learn more information. Okay. Secretary's report?
The annual conference, joint conference, at downtown Chicago, online registration starts June 9th. Do you have any board members that?
Is it registered already? What? Already?
Couple weeks. That's all.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. The reports, we can go through those real fast. Finance and Audit has a presentation tonight. Policy, when do you guys meet again?
Well, now that we have the different super board members, I need to talk to you, Mr. Perry, I don't know what would be a good day, so if we could maybe, we pick that out real quick and just get it on.
Sure.
I didn't know if next week was any good. The week after that, we have a board meeting as well. I didn't know if you want to meet that week, but administration's done with their recommendations as far as, yeah. So we can.
So anytime?
So anytime.
Next week would probably be better, because the week after that's graduation, it just kind of gets.
I'm not here this weekend.
Okay. Oh, you're not here? Okay. Oh, you're not here.
You're not here, not either, do you? So it'd have to be the following week, the week of,
About, last day of school is that Thursday. Wednesday, next week,
Wednesday's fine.
just before the board meeting.
You mean the June 4th?
Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, yeah, go next week's date.
We'll meet before the June 4th meeting.
That's okay. Sound
Okay.
good?
Okay.
So 5:30. So
And did you
June
get-
4th or 5:30?
June 4th.
June 4th, 5:30.
At 5:30.
Okay.
Okay, insurance, you guys haven't met?
No.
in a while. Transportation,
You haven't, should we start meeting?
yes. I personally think that we need to get on that, get working with that as soon as possible. Can I take a start full Dave, transportation, we should.
Oh, absolutely.
David and Patrick. Transportation, that should reform and start working.
Well, you just say it meets, it's an ad hoc, so it's.
It's an ad hoc.
We once a total. So you're okay with this meeting?
Sure.
What I'll do, I'm not sure the chairs, but I'll send some topics for everybody to look at.
Oh, it was Pam Mazurk, so I wonder would it be Barb then, if Pam's not here? So
Barb
Barb,
will send some topics, then.
yeah, she would be the chairperson then, if Pam's not here.
But I'll work with you on some topics, we'll send forward.
Technology committee, we're pretty set on that, correct? And
Yeah.
then, negotiations, we're gonna start meeting in June. correct? Okay. Superintendent's report, Dr. Pam has something for us.
Just a couple things. In front of you, before the meeting, I passed out to you the job description for the director that we currently have on file in the school district, for the director of buildings and grounds, director of transportation, and director of operation. Pam Mazurek is currently, her title is currently director of operations, and as you know, she is retiring at the end of June. So we have not posted a position to replace Pam and start receiving applicants. And the question is, do you want a separate director of transportation and a separate director of buildings and grounds? Should we try to seek one person to cover both of those areas as Pam has been assigned to over the last year or so? And I also gave you a spreadsheet that we put together. Barb had some information for organizations, and Sandy filled in some extra for me at my request, giving you some information about possible tentative salaries, salary ranges that you might want to discuss at your June 4th meeting. There was information to give to you now to start thinking and digesting that. You'll see it again as we go forward, but I wanted to pass something out to you this evening, just to start getting the ballpark figures so we can do that. And then the other thing that I do not have in front of you, but we'll try to put some notes together next week to push out to you, is about our committee that we've been working on with extracurriculars. We met with the Warrior Booster Club back in April, and then Barb and myself and Bill and Debbie Lynch have been meeting, along with Dennis Kennedy as well as the current director of activities, just to see where we are and what it's going to take for us to take this back, so to speak, in terms of gathering registrations and fees and so on from families, to have all of the administration of extracurriculars back in-house and within the school district. If you remember back in the fall, the Warrior Booster Club asked the district to take the program back. But we're at a bit of a stalemate, I think, would be the best way to put it. Wouldn't you say so, Barb? As far as we talk about fees, and a lot of the fees were stipends for coaches and supervisors, of course. But keeping in mind that the Warrior Booster Club collected fees and did a substantial amount of fundraising to offset the cost of those fees. So in going forward and determining what would fees look like for students, is it money in, money out as it used to be, is being insisted on that, in fact. So how are we going to go forward? Because we aren't going to be involved in that kind of fundraising, and the amount of time that we've wrestled with it, it's apparent that fees would have to go up if it was exactly money in, money out, like it has been for the last few years. So I will put information together as, it's a little complex in getting it organized so it makes some sense and reconstruct some of those conversations. So you have some of that information, but it would be helpful if we had some input from the board and what kind of philosophy you would like us to follow in terms of going forward with that program, so that in July we can notify parents as to how things are going to be handled through a website, and pushing emails out and so on, when that registration for activities would take place in the fall. And tentatively, we're looking at a fall registration and a winter registration, so that students might have the opportunity, if they wanted to be in drama club during the fall term of activities, so to speak, maybe they would want to be in something different in the second half of the year, so that it gives a little bit more options. In the past, parents have been paying everything up front for a full year's worth of activities, and that was one of the recommendations from the Booster Club, that maybe we break it up a little bit. So we've wrestled with, if it's X number of students, then we divide up whatever that stipend is to cover the coach or supervisor, and that's the cost, but basically the cost of the activity. Or do we look at categories of activities, like all clubs would be assessed at this amount? To be on the safe side, I think last year's budget was in about the $120,000 range, and that covered most of the activities. And we bumped that up a little bit, not knowing if there was some kind of contingencies, thinking that it's more like in the $130,000 range. And that was all of their expenses, not their revenue. It didn't include what they took in for fees and so on. So, but it seems apparent at this point in time that we would have to increase the fees to families if it was to maintain that same philosophy. So my goal is to get something into your hands next week so that you can look at it. I wanted you to know it was coming and to wrestle with that, because I think it will be a discussion about which direction to go in, and that will help provide us some direction going forward as an admin team. I'd be glad to answer any questions if I start any at this point, if I can.
What would the booster clubs, what would they?
What would their role be?
Yeah, what-
That's a good question. They're still functioning. The leadership, as you know, of the Booster Club is changing as we go forward into this upcoming school year. They will still do their fundraising, but they would like to support the school district in a different way. If a team needed uniforms, for instance. Some students are sponsored through the Booster Club whose parents can't afford the registration fees, so that they can at least participate in some kind of activities at the school. Or special kind, if we have students who are going downstate, sponsoring students to compete at the next level, those are the kinds of things. Maybe more traditional types of Booster Club activities than you have seen in the past. It's truly remarkable and a testament to the community, the job that they've done over the last 3 or 4 years in sponsoring the extracurriculars the way that they have and running it. It's obvious that it's an enormous amount of work in the way that it's been handled. The bookkeeping alone is just, it really is something that you should be very, very proud of.
Two things.
Yes.
Is the group of board under the assumption that the range of offerings is going to be the same this coming year, as it was in the past?
That's how we started out, but certainly there are some things that perhaps the district might step back from, and we can have that discussion as a group without trying to pinpoint anything right now. And then there are some things, because of the cost, and the philosophy was a good one, and I believe you had to handle this the way that you did, because the district was under financial watch, and it is insisted that it was money in, money out, dollar for dollar. But that may be the direction that we stay with. But there are some activities, and one of them is the Science Bowl, or academic bowls, that maybe only a handful of students are able to participate in. And so by the time you consider the cost of a teacher sponsor and a little bit of the travel that's involved, there's some transportation cost involved with some of those things. it's almost $500 a child. It almost knocks us out of the running in terms of who could afford to do that. And kids who do that have particular talents, so it's a small group of kids on top of it, and then it's whether or not, you know, it fits into their household budget, and maybe they can't do anything else then too.
And then the other thing that I'd be interested in seeing
Sure.
is a projection about what the cost would be to do a fully funded, self-sustaining, hard money and commitment on the part of the district. Because you talked about
Yes.
that, for example, the occasional replacement of uniforms for the
Right.
teams. And we know that's going to happen. We don't know which year, and we know it's not going to happen every year.
It's
But
hard
if you
to
take the-
know when.
Well, I understand, but if you
Yes.
take the long view, and you say, well, every 5 years, you do uniforms, and then you work that into the big picture, I would enjoy seeing that, and including travel to the next level. Again, just make an estimate, so that if the cost last year was 120, but you anticipate what it might be per year to do the full thing, I'd like to know what that is.
I think we could, the uniforms might be a little dicey, and sometimes it's, we'll figure that in to the extent that we can. Sometimes once a child makes a team, especially a varsity team or 8th grade team, it's a little easier to swallow because those are tryouts, so to speak. So we can, I know you understand that, so we'll put that in, but certainly, we do have line items for things like transportation and that, so I think we have that, you could do some calculations
If
for
we're
it.
fully committed to the program, we wouldn't want to raise the rates in a year so we can have uniforms.
No,
For
no,
example.
no.
So,
And I think you've got.
And it depends
booster
upon
clubs
the
who can
team
help with
too.
that.
Like basketball, they're gonna use their uniforms several more times than volleyball. I mean, volleyball only wears it 8 times a year. You know, there's different, I would imagine that there's different usage of equipment and uniforms for the different teams. So you can't like just say, you know what I mean, you can't just make a ballpark and say, okay, we have to buy new uniforms every 5 years because volleyball might only need them like every 10.
The uniforms would not be the sticking point, it's more stipends, things like that. Currently, the cost of supervisors and coaches is not part of the negotiated agreement. So from that standpoint, you don't have the cost projection quite the same way as you know. So you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Just,
Go
there's
ahead.
one change that factor it used to be a problem in that boosters had to come up with all the money up front.
Yeah.
And that was something Bisbee had mandated.
Yes.
That,
What they did this year, they did 2 parts, right?
no, so
No,
it was
they
all
only did
100% up
I thought
front.
they did 2.
And that's why we felt that we could go,
They gave us another check later,
Yeah,
but that was for an additional club that they added on.
They mandated it refunded.
all the money.
And that
went to
caused a
them.
lot of difficulties on their part. Now, what they'll say, we want to continue, basically pay to play, at least we can raise it throughout the year as opposed to 100% up front.
Yes, and that's why they did recommend having maybe more than one registration. We started out with the thought that maybe we would have 3 seasons, and it made sense to have 2, because of the overlap between the winter and the spring season. So, that, you know, just that alone might help a little bit for families.
But for the first sport in the summer, and then as we,
That's what this was,
you know, well, thing,
Well, anytime there's more participation, we do that because paying on that isn't that fun, you know.
It's a burden if you've
Yeah.
got 2 kids.
well, it helps
Much
them
as
to
3.
do the fundraising throughout the year. Then, as opposed to-
We won't be able to do fundraising.
It's just literally.
We are not going to be able to do fundraising to the level that they did. I seriously doubt.
And I highly doubt
I
that.
seriously doubt.
Hopefully someone will take over for the Kramers, but the Kramers went above and beyond. I don't know if we'll ever get that back as far as their
We
fundraising.
won't see checks for $100,000. That I know.
Okay, so can we move on to the treasurer's
You
report?
can, thank you.
Expenditures to date through the end of April were 20.6 million, which was 80% of our budgeted expenditures for the year. And our actual revenue was 24.2 million, which was 89% of our budgeted revenue for the year. time, we're at 83%, or it's 10/12 of the year. So we're above on revenue, but we still have one more payment to come in from DuPage. That'll come in the month of June. And as far as expenditures go, there's several payments that haven't gone out yet. Curriculum supplies, that payment isn't on this bills list. So there's some payments that we haven't seen come through yet, but we should still come in under budget.
Can I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report, reconciliation schedule, variance explanation, bank statement, and PMA analysis, revenue and expenditure detail, balance sheet, investment structure, and PERS report for the month of April 2014 as presented?
Second.
Pat and Dave. Sorry, Al. Roll call. Dale Mealy. Oh, comments?
Discussion.
Any discussion?
I had one topic that I had sent an email on. It was related to some of our investments. And we had about $6 million invested in Bank of China. I don't know enough about that. I know in the past it was Bank of India and all that, but it wasn't a lot of money. Now we have money in reserves. Is there any risk investing in those funds?
This was an investment that was recommended by PMA, and the risk associated with it is the same as any other investment that we would make, so there's no risk.
And I said, you gotta just look out for this $300 in interest is worth it, if there's any risk at all.
That's actually a fund held within a fund.
Right,
in-
no, I understand.
at
Yeah.
PMA. So,
So I just want to throw it out there.
Can I have a roll call? Dale Mealy.
Yes.
Dave Molitor.
Yes.
Dave Dydemeyer.
Yes.
Pat Kerrigan.
Yes.
Cindy Kelly. Yes. 5 yes, 2 absent. Okay, comments from the audience. Please note a 3-minute limit to speak to the board. Please, if you choose, submit a statement in writing to the board. Please note that the board will listen to the comments, but will not comment or ask questions of those who address the board. Please, if there's a large group at the meeting, assign a spokesperson for the group. The president may deny an individual the opportunity to speak if the individual has previously addressed the board on the same subject within the past 2 months. Each speaker shall address their subject matter to the Board of Education in a reasonable tone and shall focus on issues and not personalities. The use of profanity and attacks on individuals is not allowed. The president has the right to change these procedures in certain instances as he or she sees fit. The decision of the president on any of these rules is final. Please conduct yourself with respect and civility towards others and otherwise abide by board policy. Laura Regal.
Laura Regal, Lemont, Illinois. I would like to remind the board of a few things tonight. Public Act 940881, which reads, it's the oath of office, the beginning of it. I, in the name of each board member, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully discharge the duties of office of member of the Board of Education of Lemont Bromberek Combined School District 113A in accordance with the Constitution of the State of Illinois and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability. Now I'm going to cite the next one, 5 ILCS 140/2, Freedom of Information Act, C-5. Private information means, this is part of the Freedom of Information Act, means unique identifiers, including a person's social security number, home or personal telephone numbers, and personal email addresses. Private information also includes home addresses and personal license plates. Now, if we go to the consent agenda for tonight, and that, which is letter J, under 5, we have the FOIAs, Freedom of Information Act. If you go there tonight, the board approved tonight at the beginning of the meeting the agenda for tonight, along with the administration, because the administration and the board president are the ones that compile the agenda. Under that letter J, my home address and my email address is on there. It's not redacted. But documents given to me by the district, including the interim superintendent's personal phone number, have been redacted. So the district completely knows how to redact documents. We pay a lot of money to redact documents using the district's attorney. Thus, this board is now made aware that they have violated the Freedom of Information Act law. They haven't followed it. They're allowing information by your votes tonight. You've been doing it in the past. The district's been made aware of it before by several individuals from the community, which I can provide emails for. So I'm making you aware of that right now, that there is a violation of the Freedom of Information Act by not redacting the documents correctly. And I do not give this board or any public agency permission to put my personal information out there. Next. Also on there, the agenda reads, which was approved, Freedom of Information Act FOIA. Yet under that, the letter J is items that aren't FOIA. And it might be related, but they aren't FOIA. So how the board is allowing that to be put on there is another subject matter. With that also in mind, if the board, which they have never done that, put that item up there or put it on the agenda in the past, is going to do that, they also need to put on the agenda items that they haven't put on there in the past, which I'm going to present to you, which is from our attorneys from September 29, 2010. I will give a copy to Mrs. Kelly, Board President.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to the finance presentation.
Do I need a microphone or? Fine.
You're fine.
Okay.
Minutes once.
Yeah.
He's going to go fast, guys, so we can't talk. I'll let him go.
Pay attention.
John's my favorite.
John's is
He
not.
goes so fast.
Our charge statement is to read financial statements and,
Do you want us to find you?